Councilman Moffett just got here a few minutes a second ago.
Yes, this was in addition to a couple months ago I emailed,
Yep.
and I don't think that either one of you would have gotten that email. It was just a quick once over of things I want to kind of bang out when I first started. So, like number one on here, learn where everything is. It was legit like number one thing, and I'm still learning where things are, especially in the safe back there. It's kind of some stuff and things. So number two on this original list was hire a deputy clerk, and I have aggressively crossed that off because we did get that done. And then I have familiarized myself with HR duties and responsibilities because that's new to me, and we are doing so. It's a blessing to have Michelle once a week to kind of answer some of those questions and do some of the election stuff because she's done the HR all along. So I'm still working on that. Inventory all the files and objects in local storage. I've done some of that. We did find that there are boxes missing of past council minutes. I think they can be found by the time we're done, but they're not where they're supposed to be. Put it that way, in the back election room. So that room needs to be overhauled, and I know that.
Are you scanning them in?
Well, okay, that's a whole other project that Jennifer and I have talked about. I need to talk to the state about how much of that can be scanned in. And sometimes we just we'll have it twice then. We'll have it scanned in and we have to keep the paper pop. So for the council minutes specifically, I believe that we are going to keep those as they are. Scanning them in becomes valuable if we have to index them and go find things from the past. A lot of those important things are already set out and taken aside. That leads right into the other thing was purge unnecessary files per retention schedule. We've already done a little bit of that, and I do see more of that coming. Evaluate clerk's office contracts and vendors. I've done a little bit of that. More of that is coming as it comes up at council. Streamlining access to public documents and reducing the need for formal FOIA requests. This is something that I'll work with the city manager's office.
Putting more stuff online, basically.
More stuff online, and I can't stand. It drives me nuts when someone wants to know about a property that's their own property, and they go to the building department, and then they have to come over to my office with a FOIA and do that process. As long as there's a record of the request, I think it's a public document.
Should just be in BSNA.
But the department, and this happens in other cities too, they require a Freedom of Information Act request, the formality of going through it. That's just a policy, and I'm going to work on changing that. Produce easy-to-follow, streamlined, accurate minutes, and I have done that. Evaluate the hybrid meeting model. I think that's going to kind of happen on its own. We're past the point where we can vote remotely. The state of emergency has expired. So in order to vote, you have to be here. We can decide as a council if you want to keep doing the public comment, being able to join by Zoom, it's up to you. But that's one of the things to keep an eye on. And I do watch what other cities do, and cities are kind of 50-50 on that stuff. And then assist the city manager with timely and accurate agenda packet information, which I've also been doing all along, more so now. So those are the original goals from a couple months ago.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Sure.
I wanted to go a little bit more foundational to start. A lot of times, because kind of what you said, there's so much time that goes in between things that you almost need a refresh.
Well, hence redoing it with a fresh list.
No, that part, yes.
Yeah.
But I actually want to go to the charter, the ordinances, and the clerk's duties from that perspective. I know there was the job descriptions thing that you applied to and whatever. And I had a couple questions for Mr. Newshai because I want to make sure I'm right. Mr. Newshai, with the city clerk underneath us, we are responsible for, and I mean, we write that job description, correct? One way or another, whether it's a rewrite or original write or update, but that's under city council because the city clerk is hired by city council, correct?
First, I apologize for the little bit of tardiness.
Nobody cares.
In the age of Corona, we've forgotten how to do this child caring thing, apparently. Yes and no. Obviously, there's terms set by the charter. You won't be able to change those.
Clearly.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a given.
Right. But as far as the rest is concerned, you're correct.
Okay, so council does that. Do we have any idea, and I know you don't, do we have any idea from a historical perspective when the last time that was even reviewed or looked at?
No, but by the end of the meeting, I'll give you that
And
information.
it doesn't
if
matter,
you
it's
need
been a
it.
while.
I imagine so.
I mean, not in your memory,
No, certainly not in my
so, a while.
If I ran a search in the computer, I bet you a job description is going to pop up from somewhere that was written at some point.
What I've
Oh, I'm
discovered.
sure there is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
what I've discovered.
Whichever
is that
council
we
did
do
it, I don't
have-
know, but.
We do have, sometimes they'll surprise you, but there are job descriptions for each position. I'm not sure that, the administration has been great at providing even the said employee with that, other than giving the employee the general descriptions that we have between our charter, code of ordinances, and.
And my
things of that
question
nature.
actually goes to that, which is, when is the last time, and nobody's going to know this answer, so that's kind of a rhetorical, that first part, that anybody, staff, city manager, council, anybody, looked at the job description working under and compared it to what the charter says and the ordinances?
Yeah, I mean, as
Probably a
far as
long
the
time,
city-
and so I would wonder, because what we have learned is that we have a serious issue with records, we have a serious issue with historical information, and so chances are, and things just tend to happen over time, and no one knows why or how. So I'm guessing that we maybe not have reconciled that in a while, like compared it to what it actually says. And then having said that, clearly there's things in here, some of these things were in the charter, some were in actual ordinances. And, I mean, so for example, chart of accounts, the clerk does not do the chart of accounts, period. Unless you wanted to take that up as one of your goals?
No, thank
I
you.
think so.
I decline.
I understand. So, and I, honestly, I got a whole list of them, because I just pulled and plucked them out. I can't remember which one's charter and which one's not. But, so some of them would have to go through charter commission, and that might be something someone would mention, that these things simply aren't the way it works and can't work. And I'm not suggesting that we give it to them because it's in the charter.
Yeah, over the course
But
of.
nonetheless, I'm willing to bet that we should probably, and this would be a council goal, by the way, that leads to a future, a set goal stuff, when you sit back down and say, how'd you do on some of this stuff, but we should really do that.
What was used when we interviewed? I mean, we had a job description, we had information there. I mean, that would have been the time to take a look at that before we decided what we were looking for. So we certainly have that as a foundation, the information that we used when we sought out the, 2-3 city clerks that we've had in the past 2 years. I mean, we have a foundation there. It's not like there's nothing.
Yeah, there was a position I applied to that
Right,
had a
and
list
it
of
had
things that I was
information,
qualified for.
right, absolutely. It's-
Acknowledge that.
Yeah, and
I'm
we
simply
brought that up,
saying
yeah.
that I suspect there may be things that our ordinances actually say that have lost themselves in that. And why didn't we do that? Well, probably because it took some time to understand how truly abysmal some of our records and history keeping has been. So I'm simply asking the question, when's the last time we did that? And if nobody can answer it, it needs to be done.
Yeah. I can't answer that question, but part of the answer, I think, has to do with the fact is just how cities in general develop over the course of time, and also how the position of a municipal city clerk has developed over the
Yes.
course of the year. So
I agree.
it had a certain meaning at the time of the charter, but obviously this job has transformed itself in the meantime, not just in this city, but throughout the state. It has become, it's a professional clerk's job now,
Yes.
as opposed to what was contemplated by our charter, which when you look at it, you get this, when I look at it, I get the sense of, it was, there's a series of duties here that we need done in this city.
And the clerk's going to do them.
And the clerk is going to do
Because we got
it.
5 bodies and that
Right.
one's doing
And
those.
so, but I think, to Councilmember Moffitt's point, I think over, obviously with respect to the hiring and what we put out for the RFP, we had a series of, we had this
We used an
professional
old job
clerk.
description,
Yeah.
and we said, yeah, it looks fine, and we don't have really time to.
You use the bones of what the clerk does today. That's what you reflected. in
But
that.
there was conversations with several city managers and everything about whether HR belonged there or not. It's still there. I'm just simply saying that that is something that a council should be looking at. I'm going to ask a few questions because I really want to, because some of these are ordinances which can just be wiped off the books.
True.
Charter can't, ordinances can.
True.
Some of these are ordinances. So if they're not relevant anymore, we don't need to wait for a charter revision. We should address them. So, for example, chief, do you report all to the city clerk all convictions for violations of peddlers, solicitors, and canvassers? And do you, clerk, keep a record for each license issue and record the reports of the violations from the chief therein?
I haven't been handed any to keep.
Did you even know you were even supposed to do that?
I know we manage the solicitor licenses, and we would have looked it up if something happened. Those
Yeah, we
complaints
used to
would
get a
probably
list,
come.
we used to get an email with
Yeah.
someone used to send us, I think when Jennifer Perkins was here, someone gave us a list of the peddling license that were issued for that.
Not a lot of peddling
We
licenses
don't
since
anymore.
COVID started. We've had
Right.
one.
Isn't that
We're
the
down.
problem? Excuse me, isn't that the problem, is that we don't know? Okay, and there's no little book you can pull off the shelf that says thou shalt do this. Okay.
Well, there is, here, this shall do, and actually, Councilmember Moffitt, you made my point. We don't get that anymore.
Well, is that because of COVID? There hasn't been any issue.
Yeah, we've only had like one solicitor license since
understand.
I've been here, but.
We didn't
Right.
issue last year,
I'm asking
but
a
everyone
question.
does go through and
Yeah.
receives a city ID.
Right, because they have to get their badges.
We write solicitors who don't have the permits violations, but we don't report those because they're not proper solicitors. If we do find a solicitor in violation, we're able to pull that license and he'd be notified at that point. We haven't had any problems with solicitors, and again, we've had very few over the last 2 years, but we have upgraded our system. Everyone is issued an actual ID. We pay
Badge, right.
$6 a badge now with a picture,
That's
and
good, because the ordinance says we're supposed to do that.
we do
Yeah, we do.
now,
That's good.
so.
So, did you know that you're supposed to certify and levy taxes?
The clerk always signs off
Right.
on the, yeah.
So that should,
Yeah, I've done that.
yeah, makes sense.
And we have an ordinance book?
We do. We have boxes and boxes of ordinance book. As the updates come in, they're all stacked up in the corner. Because they're all online, so that's why the paper just gathers.
Yes. And actually, that was a question for you. Is that one of those paper requirements, or is our ordinance online count as an ordinance book now?
Our ordinance online does count as the repository for our ordinances, if that's what
Okay,
you're asking.
so it does count. So, do we have an obligation to keep all of them forever?
The ordinances?
Yeah,
The
like
ones
all the
that we
ones
use.
from.
Yes,
Yeah,
we do.
even
We do.
the ones
You'd be
that- yeah.
surprised how often you look back at old repealed ordinances to find out how something happened, what went where, how we got these things on the books.
Cool.
Yeah.
So
It
that's
is
why
good
you
to
have
have that.
boxes and boxes of them, because
Yeah,
we.
and I don't know, well, for your edification of that question, at the courthouse, at the 52-4 District Court, I keep, all your prior attorneys and myself included, we keep the code of ordinances sort of all, and the charter, all neatly compound for ourselves and for the judges. So there's always that.
Cool.
Just so, and we have a service, I think, and I'm not sure who pays for it, but we have a service that the court has that upkeeps those ordinances. We supply to them, they get it from Unicode, I don't know
Oh,
how.
I
how
see
that-
it. I mean, ours get updated pretty quickly. I've seen, I just literally wondered, is it like the
No,
minutes where
it's-
you have to have a
it's fair.
paper copy, or are we okay? I mean, I figured, I just wondered, because it's, and the same with the zoning map. City clerk's supposed to maintain that too. Do we have that? Is our online one sufficient? Or does it have to be?
I think so. Now that, once we get the zoning,
I'm not sure about that, but yeah, you may want to take a look at it. I know we've had a couple of zoning issues come up as far as the map, and it's not.
Okay.
it's not accurately reflected, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because every time we adopt, which we're about to today, and we have been, because planning's been redoing a lot of stuff, the clerk is supposed to, do a little thing, and then it's supposed to be authenticated and put in a.
Codified.
So,
Yeah.
clerk
And
duties
again,
in
I'm
their,
just-
clerk
is it-
duties in their regard, as you know, he's the official notary of the city ultimately, right? He's the official signatory of the city. So by definition, all these documents sort of get funneled through the city clerk's office to be signed off.
Yeah, I'm just asking, is our maps online sufficient, or is that another paper copy thing? I'm curious.
Yeah, if they are obviously accurate, yeah, they're sufficient. You don't need the paper copy as far as to have a repository in the city as far as that's concerned. But to Councilmember Shepherd's point, if they're not accurate, well.
They
that's-
may have been updated. We had an issue a couple months ago, as far as there was a gentleman over on the east side of town that was close to the city center, I believe, that had a question as whether his property was on one side of the zone, whatever it was, or the other. But
Sure.
in any event, that came up as a question. You may have been involved at that point in time.
Doesn't that new software we bought supposed to take care of all that?
The stuff that Giffords there.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it does. but I have not seen it in action, so.
No, yeah, that's.
But that was a question that came up, we actually, I think we took it offline and it was resolved outside, but I think it's been fixed. But that was one thing that came up that we'd identified or discovered that was an error.
Who keeps a record of all the property belonging to the city?
I have a file of deeds and city property that is it's consistently kept in court and clerk's offices. That's where that belongs, yeah.
So what designates property?
Are you talking about real property, or are you talking about?
I don't know. The charter literally says, he, of course, shall keep a record of all property belonging to the city. I'm asking, it does not say what property is. What is property? I'm asking a question.
Yeah, if it's not designated as such, it would mean both real property and personal property. Ordinarily, August is correct that the rules, most cities just have a list of real property. I can imagine.
Other cities, they do inventory of all the stuff you have in
So
City
each
Hall,
de-
each department
each
inventories.
department,
I mean, that can be done. Just tag things. I noticed we don't have like City of Clausen property of tags on every printer. Some cities do that, and that's considered
Well,
property.
yeah.
And it usually goes through it gets stored in the clerk's office. It becomes a citywide project.
Well, I also know that the finance department is gonna have, because they have, for depreciation, so they have a running list of capital purchases, which
Sure.
would be property. I mean, I'm assuming property has a dollar amount at some point, I don't think that,
You do it for insurance purposes as well.
counts, Right, right. So, then that's actually, so you have a list of property, okay, then, and that includes any restrictions or anything about all those property?
You mean like deed restrictions and things like that?
Well, like the question we keep asking on Hunter, did we,
Well,
by the way, did we get that?
I don't know I think that was solved. Was that figured out with the last batch of
Actual
paper?
insurance with respect to that property and related properties, I was asked to do on account of school properties. As soon as I get.
It's not on the title, I can tell
I'm
you, I
sorry?
already got it.
Yeah, I understand, but we have to go by the title. If there's other limitations which can exist above and beyond the title,
I understand.
yeah, you'd have to get to that document.
I thought Jennifer knew the person that, in the state that actually sent it.
I thought that was done myself. I had not heard about it since about 10 days now, so I thought that they had gotten to the limits with what I could find. I don't know where it went from there.
Now, there's a series of email exchanges, and I can't go
Not
off of
maybe not,
memory
okay.
because I see a lot of emails, but I believe that, we will be able to get you an answer to that.
That is an example of what the clerk's office would, that if you were to look for that file anywhere, it's gonna be either in my office or in one of those storage bins in the back, that's where that stuff is.
So then, when we come to two things that, when you say reduction of paper and other media taking up space, some of that would be wherever it can be electronic and not required to be in paper.
Sure.
You're saying, and then when we say reduction of paper, and then what was the other one, because you had it on here, I know you did, I saw it, or maybe it was on the first one, about the record system, I think maybe it was on the first one. You were gonna,
Oh, yeah, like Nick and I have looked at the Granicus versus board docs versus other different, it's more like evaluating the
Oh, that
vendors
was
we
just-
have
okay.
and see which one's easiest to work with. There's different companies that do the document, the minutes and agendas and the ability to search our ordinances and stuff.
So I guess what I'm asking though is, since according to the charter and parts of the ordinances, generally, with some exceptions, I know the police department has certain things that they absolutely track that aren't, but generally you are the clerks is the keeper of records, correct?
Yes.
And the records are a hot disaster because we can't find
They're
them.
not a hot disaster.
Then
They're
why
no more
every time do
than,
we ask, nobody can give us one?
well, it depends on how far back you're looking for things. You also have to understand, I don't know where everything is
No,
yet.
you
That's
don't.
number
I'm
one.
not saying you
Learn
can't
where
give us
everything
one.
is.
No,
So
I'm not saying-
working on
August,
it.
I'm not saying you can't give us one.
Yeah.
I'm saying for the past however many, at least for 2 years mayor and before that, when you ask for records, nobody can find them. And you even just said, there's boxes and boxes and some things are missing and we can't find. I mean, I have asked over and over again just to see, do I have an updated 457 plan document? Never have received one. Nobody can find one. Still haven't got one. I mean, I could go on. My question is, as part of these goals, when you say reduction of paper, and I thought you were talking about ordinances, I'm asking, is organizing our records with some sort of index with some sort of tracking mechanism, depending on what it is, whether it's the reduction of paper or whether it's something that has to be on paper, is that what you're seeing as part of your goals? Based on what I'm reading, all the records are with you, all of these different things that are part of the records, and some of these things are things we haven't been able to find complete records on, so.
When I wrote this, what I had in mind was, for example, the insurance claims. They're all online, they're all scanned in, yet previous clerks have always had a folder full of them, and then they just keep building up into a box. We don't need those. We don't have to do it that way. So that's kind of what I had in mind. The project that you're talking about, a scanning and indexing project, is a much bigger and a more expensive thing, which I'm happy to look into. I think it's great. I think it's very efficient, but they also can be expensive. So you got to look at what you want to do with that, and I'm happy to do that.
I'm not even necessarily saying everything would be scanned in.
Right, no, not everything's worth scanning in.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's part of what you were saying,
Right.
that finding what can be, what. So I guess let me ask you this next question, because from what, this came up in all of the when we, at one point, we're looking at policies, the record retention policy. And most of those are gonna be federal, state, and, there's actual legal ones, so this isn't rocket science, you don't have to make them up. But, so we still don't, do you have policies? Do you have record retention policies? Do you actually have them in writing that you can pull out and?
Everything that we
verify?
have to retain does come from the state level. We do have all that.
Well, there's federal requirements too.
Well, yeah, but that's not in my office, not too much of that. Most of that stuff,
All HR, so a lot of HR stuff would have federal
yeah,
requirements.
but that's all in there. We have all of those requirements.
Plan documents was a federal requirement, we don't have some of that.
Which documents?
47B, plan documents that nobody.
That's the first I've heard of that. I don't.
I know you didn't, I'm not
Tell
saying
you-
any of
I don't
this
tell
is
you.
not about your fault or anything.
I know,
I'm
I
just
just-
trying to understand, I want you to understand some history.
Okay.
And I'm asking the questions of what you were, did you know some of this history, and was that what you were thinking with this, and some of it
I was
sounds like
thinking
no.
like the stacks of floppy disks that are sitting in boxes in the back that
Can we
we can't even
even
access anyway. Just
I was gonna
things.
say, can we even get something?
Yeah, we don't know what's on them or what we could get, or how to even get the stuff off of them. But they're there because no one wants to be the one that throws away the Betamax tape that, from
I mean, I
82.
understand there's limits, some documents are just simply gonna be lost, I get it. My question though is, are we looking at this, are you thinking of looking at this comprehensively, looking at those retention record standards, and once and for all, putting in a system that people can follow on an ongoing basis, so we do have ongoing accurate records that are accessible and understandable to anybody?
I think we're losing sight of our original intention here. And August, you've been here how long?
Since May, so the
Since
summer,
May, June,
a season.
July, August, September. Not even 6 months. Statistics show it takes 6 months to effectively learn any job. So I think we need to set the parameters for the goals. We're not looking for you to cure all the ills of the past 40 years in your first 6 months, nor are we
wasn't even
expecting you to
talking
do
about
it
6 months.
within the first year.
I get the same questions that I had when I got here, though. Like, how much of the stuff do we need? What can we,
Right.
that kind of, and it comes up right away.
Right. So, and I think that you acknowledge that things need to happen. You need to organize and figure out what you have before you can figure out what you need to dispose of and how you need to catalog and that sort of thing. So I think that in setting goals, we need to set some realistic short-term goals. The man hasn't even been here for 6 months. And we need to, I'm saying that, your goals are in the spirit of what she's looking for, but you're not going to be able to get to the end in the near term. Those are long-term goals.
I wasn't
So
setting I was simply.
We're here to
setting
set
the
goals
stage.
for him.
We are, but who said they were 6-month goals?
there have to be attainable, reasonable goals. You're talking about taking care of the ills of the past 40 years and taking care of all the records and understanding all this kind of stuff that he hasn't even had a chance to
I
dive
didn't
into.
say that, you're putting words in my mouth.
I'm taking the essence of what you're saying, and that's the way perception is reality, and that's the way it's
Actually,
perceived by
If you
someone who's listening.
Actually, if you understand the overall goal, which was what I was trying to get to, you would then break that down into shorter term goals. Boom, that are achievable. I certainly was not thinking everything would be solved in 6 months or 2 minutes or even maybe 2 years.
Well,
I simply was saying, do we understand the larger goal over time? And what might be the steps of a short-term goal that is reasonable to achieve that. First of all, it doesn't sound like we would have been on the same page totally for a long-term goal, because you were kind of, I get some of what you were thinking, we're talking a little, I'm looking at some stuff, I get it. So that's where I was going. What's the overall thing, and what might be reasonable steps in the shorter term to get there? And maybe some of it is not even to, maybe the first part of that is simply to let you go back and think that through.
Oh, the basic inventory, just knowing
There you
what
go.
is where and what, yeah, that's,
Which was on your
and that's what
report.
goes back to just figuring out where things are. Some things you don't even know until it gets asked for.
Right.
Then you gotta go look for it, and then you find out you don't have it, like, you know.
But a
so-
records inventory would be a short-term reasonable goal toward that.
Oh, that's a long-term goal.
That's a long-term
That's a long-term
We
goal.
were talking about what's long-term, what's short-term,
Yeah.
right? So is there a way to do a quadrant analysis as far as what's easy in the short term, what's a big item that's going to take long, and put it into those buckets so that we can clearly see as far as, okay, what is
Yeah,
it that you can
there's-
get taken care of? What's these long items that is going to require additional resources, more of your time, things
Which
like
also
that?
might be some capital expenses that we would need to think of in CIP. Like you said, scanning we could do, doesn't mean you have to do it, or we put someone by a scanner, it means.
No, we
essentially-
wouldn't do that. It has to be done by,
Of
a
course.
company comes in and does that.
I know.
That's-
So,
And
but
there's
that
approved vendors
would-
to state level just for these jobs.
And that would be an
Yeah.
expense we might want to think of. So my whole thing was, if we look at this a little bit bigger, but then narrow it back down to the short term, for exactly those reasons, because some of those steps we might want to work in to the budget, your budget, city clerk's budget, stuff like that, right? I mean, I don't know, say, hey, go do this, and you're like, I got no money for that.
Yeah, but the record retention and the old solving the mysteries of where's what is a common clerk's job thing, and I'm used to it, and the more questions, the more things we gotta find. Like, that's how I know we couldn't find that Hunter, we couldn't even find the box that council meeting was in. So we're like,
Oh, that's how you
what?
figured out we were missing some of those minutes?
Yeah, because that box is missing. Now, might that box turn up underneath something behind something still? Because there's a lot of election stuff that we have to purge out of there still? It could. But in the first search that Michelle and Jennifer made in the back, they couldn't find it. I'm not convinced it's gone. Things get mislabeled all the time. And that comes
Well, I
down to
guess
taking
I'm
the
a
lid
little-
off of every box and seeing what we got. And
Here's
we'll
the
we'll
part
have time to do that
confused.
after,
I get that. Here's the part I'm confused on. Michelle is here, and Michelle was our clerk for eons. So why doesn't Michelle know where all this stuff is?
that she went to where she thought it was in the box, and it wasn't there. That's what I'm saying. There was a missing box. Now, it could have been mislabeled somewhere. We'll find that out eventually when we take that on, going to the back room and taking the lid off every box and seeing what we have.
Unfortunately, that room at one point was the store-all for everybody. Building department, police department records, everything was jammed in there. So it was kind of when you brought a box in, you threw it where there was an open spot. So a few years ago, we pulled all the police records out, so that left, and I think Joan has pulled her, some of the building records have come out. So they're trying to figure out what's left in there. I'm just saying, at one point, it wasn't just city clerk boxes, so I'm just letting you know, it was
Oh, I
really
believe you. Yeah, it was all jammed in.
everything.
which-
We've separated our
I'm
records.
Still back to my original point, it would be, let's start at the beginning, and maybe part of that is storage. And better labeling, and then you go back, once you know what's there, like you said, an inventory, then you start saying, this can be scanned, and this can, I mean, I'm just asking you.
The project is on the list. That's a major issue. You know, it makes everyone's lives easier if you know where everything's at.
Councilmember Moffat's point, because on this, I agree, there's the long term, but how do you get to that? And simply saying, we're gonna take an inventory, we're gonna do this, it's very difficult to say, great, I don't wanna sit there in 6 months, I won't be here, but somebody sit there in 6 months and go, well, you had on here, you're supposed to do the records, and why isn't it done? To her point. And my
Well,
point is, can we be
his-
specific about short term?
His line says inventory all files and objects in local storage. To me, that sounds like a fantastic first start because it's finite, right? We only have so many records, we have so many files, right?
Right.
Once you have that, then you'll have an understanding of what you got
You just said
and
that
where
would
you go
take
from
more
there.
than 6 months, right?
I mean, you just
With
gotta get a
everything
schedule.
else that
We gotta put the
is on the
schedule
list.
together, pick the days we're gonna wear jeans and go in the back and start hammering through
Then there you
things.
go, that's
know?
what you know what, there's
Yeah,
a goal
and
that
it's-
I could live with for a 3 to 6 month goal.
Yeah,
Set a
absolutely.
schedule, and say this is what we're gonna
It's-
do and by when, and yes, George. go
Through the election, we do that.
Where were you reading that from?
This is an email that
You don't
he
have it.
sent,
That's what he was talking about earlier.
right, he sent
That's okay,
back,
never mind, don't waste your time.
Months ago, that was when I first started, yeah.
right. And so that was one of, it's itemized there, right?
And that was
Learn
like
everything.
written as I first walked in the door and looked around.
Right, you were like, oh, I need to inventory all these files,
This needs
figure
to
out where
be
everything
looked
is,
at.
right?
Yeah.
Right,
At
so,
that time, was that a long-term or a short-term goal?
It's a goal in general. It's short, it would never be a short-term goal. It's just something you gotta get through. And I walked into election season.
Yes, you did.
And these are the kind of projects you take on in December, January, February, you know?
August, none of this is about what
Yeah.
you have and haven't done.
Well, I know.
Please understand that.
I'm trying to give the reality of having done it before, how it gets done. You know, I have no problem doing it.
That's why we're asking you,
Yeah.
because you have done it before.
Hmm?
And you just said, when I said, oh, well, is that a 6-month goal? You laughed and said, heck no, that would be much longer. So I like what you just said, which was, we pick a schedule for our Gene Days and we more or less stick to that. I recognize things come up. That actually, and somewhere in there is maybe some more specificity about, hey, you know, this is where we're at, and give some regular updates on, set that schedule, and here's your progress report. That, to me, is a short-term, easy, in the next year goal to track, without.
Oh, yeah, and the next year, sure. I would, and this is the year to do it. You know, after the local elections, that's when you have some time in December and January and February.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So that, to me, is a little more specific and clear, and easier for you to know what this is exactly done. So is that a bad one? Is that a reasonable
There's
one?
nothing bad about it at all. It's fine.
And then you can come back and say, okay, great, we did our Genes Day, we know this now. Here's what I think the next step should be, because obviously, like you said, this is a long-term, you know, then you might come back and say, okay, we know we've got stuff that, here's what we think should be scanned, here's what we don't. You can give some more specifics and then set the next set of goals, but that also might help us budget. Do we need any budget for that goal? Or is that just something that can work into time?
That's something that will definitely work into time. It doesn't need to be in the next 6 months. We can figure out exactly what's realistic.
Awesome.
And what would be useful, because not all, that scanning process isn't always beneficial for the money.
I get it. That's
You gotta
why
figure
I
out
don't know
what you got.
we should
Yeah.
and shouldn't, because I don't want to spend money.
At some level, you take some old records, you ship them off to, you know, sealed vaults in Lansing. So that, you know, because you're never gonna go back to that stuff, and you seal it up for historical purposes.
So when they're scanned, are they searchable? Are they?
They can be. There's different programs, different companies, different vendors that do that stuff, yes. That's the most expensive one, is the one that's easily keyword searchable.
Yep.
And sometimes you end up with a lot more information than you need,
Well,
you know.
But as you
more
get to those
information is
points,
better
Yeah,
than less.
you gotta sort through the stuff you sort through, you know.
It might be nice to
Absolutely. We just gotta see, you
give
know.
those recommendations.
And when these
before you-
questions come up, like you're trying to find something like these Hunter documents, those are the kind of things that you want to be able to find.
So you need to do a triage on what's important as far as you go through them.
Yeah, that's
Set
it,
aside
sure.
as far as those priorities and potentially as far as those items that you're looking at as being scannable and researchable or searchable.
Yeah, it has to be prioritized, you know, what records we want to do that with.
the foundation to have electronic files, however, is to having an IT system with sufficient storage space and backup space. And so, I mean, there's that foundation has to be built so that you can, you have to be able to search them and store it and make sure it's going to be there forever.
And
so
that's the
there's-
difference in the vendors and the software
Right,
versus
so
the
there's-
hardware here
there's
and all that. That's all.
All that needs to be in
Yeah.
place before you can talk about putting files up on a.
I think there's your long-term goal is the evaluation of the scannability and what the budget would be for
Big
something like
project,
that.
right.
But you'll know more when you've done the
We
first
see,
part.
yes.
Perfect.
And I mean, if I see, 10 less boxes on the shelf in there, I'll feel like I've really accomplished something, you know?
Out of
Because
what,
I'm looking
10,000?
at most of this and.
60 maybe,
I
something
mean,
like
the election stuff is a give me. Nobody, of course, a lot of the stuff you've already done, like you said, the city clerk, shifting the AV that we're doing today. Conferences and stuff, of course. These are not things that are even, I mean, I must have.
Well, I mean, I really, please don't skip over how important I think it is to keep consistent staff in the office and to not have
not.
turnover.
I'm just simply saying
I think it's a
there's no-
huge goal that really helps everybody in the long
But there's no
term.
debate. Nobody here is going to say, no, please, introduce chaos into your office on a regular basis.
No, I understand.
That's a give me. That's the one thing on this list, and the list you sent us originally, that was, that wouldn't be part of what you would normally do, because nobody's questioning the election stuff, right? I mean, these are all things that it would be the records. And that was very vague, and I'm looking at what we're supposed to do, and that was the one thing to me that seemed to need to be narrowed in on. The rest, I mean, if anybody else, I mean, is anybody going to tell them no conferences and trainings? Although you might want to put together
Not everyone budgets for it, so we just got to make sure we do that, that's all,
Yeah.
keep that all in the budget.
Just a very quick question. Do we know what records we have to keep indefinitely versus ones that we can
Yes.
destroy every 7 years?
Mhm.
Okay.
We know which ones we're supposed to keep and what we're supposed to destroy. Whether or not we have them is the question.
Okay.
So actually.
When we find something, oh, look, we can get rid of these
So
box of
moving
bids from
forward,
2007. They can all go now.
That's
It's-
my next
When we find
question.
them, we get rid of them.
What is our plan moving forward? So that's with future records, what is the plan moving forward? So making sure that they are accurately maintained as we go on, because I also would think that would be a goal, because we don't want to continue to have the disasters.
Right. Yeah.
No, I'm asking you, what's the plan going
The
forward?
plan going forward is find out what we have, and in the next 6 months or so.
I'm talking about new records created today, tomorrow, and the next.
Oh, that stuff's all electronic from the jump. I try not to put anything in a paper
goes
file
to
that I'm never going to need
national
to reference again. I'm trying to think of what things come across my desk now that I don't have just scanned in immediately.
Okay,
I mean,
that's-
and
so
and
now
Jennifer's
we're
very
scanning things
big
in.
about that as well. Everything gets scanned in. We don't really need to keep this copy of the letter that came in from so and so. We don't. And there are files of those letters
I got you.
that have come in
So
from
then my
anywhere.
next
So
question is.
we're working
have-
on that.
We still haven't addressed our IT security and where we're saving things to the cloud, so everything you're scanning in right now is vulnerable. Is that correct, yes or no?
I'm not an IT security person. I don't know. It's just on my computer. It's on our server.
Okay, that's vulnerable, and this isn't criticism.
No,
We need to consider that's vulnerable. We had the IT thing that was supposed to, that needs to happen, because you're scanning things in and saying it's there. Well, if they disappear, we don't have a backup or a secondary backup, or if it gets ransomed or anything like that, hijacked, we have nothing. And that is a high risk. That's a risk, Rennis. Am I wrong?
I don't think that's a legal question, but yes, I agree.
No, that is a legal question.
Is it?
Because if we go to get sued and can't produce a record, the default is against us because we can't prove otherwise.
Because we didn't have a secure system in the first place.
Yeah. I'll give you that at a reasonable rate of return.
Give me a little bit of that. That's how we treat it in the IRS. We walk in, you don't have the record, okay, we're sorry, the default is that you did it wrong.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure that carries over into other areas.
Is there a state requirement, federal requirement, as far as the level of IT security that we're supposed to have?
That's a good.
I'm not in the IT business. I don't know.
No.
I don't have an accurate answer for that.
So that's entirely up to the municipality
Correct.
to determine?
Correct.
Okay.
We do have everything on the city computers through electrosonics as far as security goes and updates, but yes, we do need to focus on getting an IT company outside of them, which is why the RFP went out. And we do need that. That's big all the way around.
You're the minute taker, I assume we have the recording this, so you're gonna come back and kind of throw the synopsis of, yes.
Well,
these are good,
it sounds
bunch
like
of
I can
records in
toss
the
this all the way
short
out and just focus on record retention.
No,
That's the jam. That's what we want, so.
There's,
New
like I
focus.
said,
No,
there's
that's fine.
nothing, these are all obviously engaged citizens.
No, that's-
you know,
that-
your AV vote test.
And honestly, there's, 9 things on here, and it's a living document, things fall in my lap that are
And some
gonna
of these
have
are
to do.
done.
Some of these are in progress, and they're gonna be done.
Yes.
But the point of this workshop for me was to what you wanted, what your priority was off of things like this. And
Can you do a simple thing, when you do something like this, date it? Because when you update it, you can date it again, so we know where we are.
sure, I
Which
can do
piece
that,
of
yeah.
paper we can throw away.
Piece of paper you can throw, yes.
I have a question about, you have includes keeping Michelle around as the elections director.
That is a budget position to have an elections director in our office. She has expressed interest in doing that job. It is very much a part-time job. There'll be entire months where we don't even need the elections director. I can't
Is there a
see,
job description?
that I know of, I don't know. I know that it was budgeted for an elections director when I got here.
Can you make sure that you have job descriptions for everybody in your department?
I can work on that, sure.
Does that, anybody disagree with that as a little short-term goal there?
She was held over as an election specialist, but
That's
Yeah.
fine, but I don't even know what that means, just
Right.
FYI. Someone show me a job description, I might. Do you know what it means, Councilmember Moffett?
I do not.
I do
didn't
not
know we
either. Yeah, well,
budgeted for it.
I'm not arguing with it.
Well,
I just don't know what
Do
it
you want me, I
means.
can give you a quick one. The election
Nope.
specialists usually they work with the QVF, the online voter files, they manage that day to day. It's something that I have done, that Jennifer has done, but it's like a little more tedious, and it doesn't take an everyday person, so it can be a part-time, and they usually are part-time, they just work a lot more right before the election. And when she knows all the workers, she knows the system here. Jennifer and I are slowly changing some of the things that are done on elections.
All fine. I think,
But it just-
to our question is, it's
Yeah.
reasonable for council to understand what the
Right.
jobs do. I don't know what that is, and thanks for sharing, but I would just like a job description.
Okay,
Of your
that's fine.
deputy, and of that, and is there anybody else in your department?
No.
And has she
just-
agreed to this?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, all right.
She said that she
Interesting.
was interested in sticking around just to do elections.
Cool.
And because she has the HR expertise, she's been coming in 1 day a week right now, just helping with HR stuff. A lot of that's being shifted over to Jennifer. She's getting on the phone calls with people, and I'm on these calls with Task, the different retiree stuff. You know, you don't process a retiree until you have a retiree. So we had one, and so now they're doing that together. So things like that makes it invaluable. But then we're not paying her to be here every day either.
Yeah, cool.
So, and I think that's sufficient use, and that's the right use of that position.
Nice.
Anything else on that one, Councilmember Moffitt?
That was the one that jumped out. Oh, I lied.
Go ahead.
Wait, we're almost at time. Do we
That's all
wanna-
right.
I just, you have enhanced volunteerism and engage citizens with effective recruitment for boards and commissions. Do you have a plan, like, how do you envision doing that?
Honestly, social media.
Okay,
That seems to be where our engagement is.
okay.
And reaching out that way is where you get people who are, they have to be, those people that are engaging through social media are interested. It's hard to grab someone randomly. They're not going to see a newspaper ad. We're not going to run TV or radio spots. That's it. That's basically your spot. And people that go to social media come to city events. They do social things in town. They go to DDA things. And they're looking there for those things. And that's the ideal, I think, the most efficient use of our
I
our
assume that
energies.
also includes keeping a file, whether it's electronic or paper, of applications that have come in, and actually the list that I spent all that time doing that's lost now,
It's not lost. We have the list.
Yeah.
We have it.
the updated one, not the old one that was given after I'd updated it.
We have the one that you finalized. And thank you for
How come
that. We
nobody's
appreciate your
given it
effort.
to me? Because I know darn well we have some expirations, and I've been waiting for someone to say, yes, here you go, Mayor, these are expired, they need to go on there. Because they need to.
I just haven't looked at it myself lately, but we can pull it up.
Okay, but that's, I'm looking for a system.
Okay. All right, well, it's not in a database format right now. It's just in a
It is,
yeah,
I just
I know.
look for a system.
No, I agree. There's no consistent system for that.
Well, there isn't,
No.
and that's important.
So I will write that down.
Thank you. All right, we are out of time, 2 minutes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We'll call that.
Oh, what order are we going in here? Councilmember Georges.
Yes.
Councilmember Moffitt.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sampson.
Yes.
Mayor Scripture.
Yes,
Councilman Shepherd.
Yes.
Workshop is adjourned.
thank you. All right. Ken, oh, there's Ken. I was gonna say you're gonna stand up there and give me my. So was that our lightning?
29.
Yep.
Yes, was our thunderstorm that we're supposed to get.
Great. Oh, you can spend some.
I know, let's see, it's at 8 o'clock,
I
so.
hope he's going, I hope